We've got some
Hey, I'm Luis.
And
I'm Luis. And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah. We miss you, and we can't wait to introduce you to today's guest, who we met through the amazing PodMax family. That being said, I hope you have been ready, because today's guest is going to challenge you to live your best life.
I'm so excited. Today's guest has an incredible story, a life faced with some of the hardest challenges someone could ever experience. But regardless of it all, he has decided to come out stronger and inspire others, inspire you as he builds his premium encouragement brand, Choose Your Attitude.
Today's guest worked 15 years in the content. Oh, wow. Now
music
tourist industry. I got it. He's the author of Loving Someone Who Is Dying and is the host of the podcast Choose Your Attitude. I hope you are as ready as we are.
That is right. Please welcome founder of Choose Your Attitude and super inspiring human, Nicholas.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I feel like there's like a light show and everything. Like I'm walking down like a model or something.
Yeah, we need to. We have actually debated of getting those special smart light bulbs where you can like control them with your phone and like change colors.
Definitely. Lasers and everything. Fireworks, pyro, confetti.
Hey, you are the man that knows all about this, with 15 years in the industry. We're gonna have to ask you a few questions.
I know, Nick, when we have the live show actually like in person, like on location kind of deal, we're gonna have to like plan something out together.
For sure.
Yeah, Nick, we're extremely excited to have you on. Clearly, you've noticed it on multiple mistakes in the intro.
We're out of shape. We're out of shape right now.
But honestly, like, it's such a pleasure to have you here. We connected through this incredible event called PodMax, and everybody that interacted with you was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe like the conversation I just had with Nick. He has so much to offer. And then we connected and you share a little bit of it. Why don't you share a little bit of your story? Like who's Nick, right? What are you doing and what you currently are doing now, which I feel like is so wonderful and so needed.
Wow. Well, thank you first for, everything and inviting me on the show. I'm super excited to be here. To be honest, I'm like everybody else. My story is everybody's got their unique, identity, their unique part of them, the journey that they've faced. I just have learned to share my story to help others, to bring their story out. I'm a kid that, in the early stages, I was a big Garth Brooks fan, and I loved, the stages that he, the shows that he produced and what he was doing. I wanted to play an instrument, but I never could figure it out. And so technology was my thing. And so, as a young kid, I just put my mind to it. And, through, junior high school to college. And then right after I graduated right into going on the road and touring with, some of these great bands. So, to start off, life has been, one of my most exciting things is music, and to be able to, spend every single day, putting these shows together for some of these, great artists is huge. But with that, we all live a life, right? We all have a story. And mine kind of, having this journey, life was great, life was going on, but, sometimes things kind of get unraveled, and, what we learn is that sometimes we don't have control in everything that we wish we did. And things kind of started to get out of hand, or started to get heavy. In 2012, I lost my mom to cancer. And then in 2017, I lost my wife of 10 years to cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a disease that affects the lungs. And at 3 years old, she was diagnosed and told that at 13 was her kind of life expectancy. So
Wow.
meeting her, I knew, that this was a challenge. Mind you, there's some story behind it that I learned later in the relationship that she had it. But going through losing her was difficult. As you can imagine, no matter how hard you plan for something like that, when the two most impactful people in your life disappear on you, all of a sudden your foundation is a little flipped upside down. So that's 2017. And so trying to go through that, trying to create a new identity. And when I say new identity, trying to find out who I am. We realize that those people close to us kind of help us, kind of like a tripod or like 4 wheels on a car, help us. We don't realize that. So moving forward and trying to go through the depression and the sadness, if that wasn't enough, in 2019, I wake up and the left side of my face is paralyzed. To me, at first, I thought it was a stroke. So, Dr. Google's telling me that, I'm having a stroke. Well, come to find out, asking a real doctor, not Dr. Google, come to find out it's, they call it Bell palsy. And luckily, a lot of it's come back. And, but it was a good enough wake-up call for me to realize, if my mom wasn't enough, if Brianna wasn't enough, who was my late wife, if not now, then when? It was one of those wake-up calls to realize how fragile we really are. I sat there not being able to hold my breath because the left side of my face was out. I couldn't hold, really drink water or chew food because you don't realize how much you need the side of your cheek to, salivate your food, or as simply as, having to put a cover over your eye because when you go to sleep, you can't close it. All these things were just kind of like, whoa. If that could happen out of no explanation of why or exact, I was like, well, my brain could shut down, my heart could shut down, my lungs could stop. So I was like, all right, it's time to write my book. And so I started writing. And in doing so, I literally, uber focused person, started writing the book, Loving Someone Who's Dying, about Brianna and her superhuman ways, taking cystic fibrosis and, being a huge advocate, always putting herself vulnerable in front of people and, being a huge voice for it. And as I was writing it, one of Brianna's wisdoms is she created quotes. She loved quotes. She would always take quotes and put them on her fridge. And it was her way to inspire herself through those difficult times. When my mom passed, she realized sometimes it kind of fades away, the memory, and she didn't want that to fade away. She's like, well, I did all this work. I want something to kind of sit there. And so she created a quote, and that quote was, choose your attitude, create your life. And what was amazing is as I was typing this book, right after she passed, I actually got that transcribed on the inner forearm of my right arm. So you can actually see it if you're looking at the video here. And so as I was typing that, I literally remember looking down and going, wait a minute. Here I am. Literally, the only thing I'm changing is my mindset, my attitude of how I'm approaching this. And it was just literally, I was approaching it. I was standing within it. And the energy I was feeling was this really sense of happiness. And what's weird is I know a lot of people are going, well, death and happiness, those don't go together. Well, they actually do if you choose, right? And so as I'm sitting there and I see this quote, I was just like, okay, so this is the power behind the quote that she had left behind, the wisdom behind this quote. And it became this full legacy that I didn't even like. The wisdom behind what she left behind was huge. So I'm writing this book and I'm sharing the story that we went through of how we went through everything, and knowing that loving someone who's dying is a heavy topic. I was trying to figure out ways to kind of share this with people, with helping people get to that subject, because that was one thing. After my mom passed and after Brianna passed, I noticed people struggling to communicate about that. And some of these things are very important for our success in life. The fears and such that we go through, those fears are what hold us back to get to that success. And so going through this, I realized that what I needed to do, being in a band or traveling, one of their big things is merch. And so I realized, well, let's create a shirt. And as I did that, being very into quality and putting things together, it formed a brand, Choose Your Attitude. And so not only did I slap these words on a shirt, and as soon as I did that, all of a sudden I saw this energy that created this funnel to allow people, it was like a welcome mat, right? To enter this conversation. All this together, 2019 is coming along. I had a full year. I was actually out with the Dave Matthews Band. And the life was set. We're ready to go. And March 10th, COVID hit. And so April 7th, we had this theater planned. We were going to do this launch. And COVID hit, and March 10th, my entire 2020 year touring season, which was all of my career, all my income, completely evaporated. So thankfully I had Choose Your Attitude. So not only was I literally inspiring others and creating this thing, but I was literally living it myself. And that's what this entire year has been. And so Choose Your Attitude has become this brand that, it's less about happy, sad. It's more about the idea of the trials and tribulations you go through in life, that we don't control, those trials and triumphs we go through, but we do control what our mindset is every morning. This isn't easy. This is one of the most difficult things. Even as I sit here and say this, I'm not saying this because I'm better than anybody out there. I'm saying this because I'm reminding myself the exact same thing. And so that's what Choose Your Attitude is. It's that friend, it's that coach, it's that reminder that it's always there. And what's been amazing is as we formed this, we also created this logo. And I'm actually going to grab this document here. And the logo, as you see, it's actually behind right here. We call it, we call it the butterfly effect. And we actually created that before we created this meaning, which is even more just like it's just very crazy.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share that first before we kind of pause. But so this is kind of a little bit of an explanation, if you will. And I'm actually going to grab this other one so I can kind of play with it. But if you put it vertical, it's an hourglass for time, right? We all live a life, and our time is of the essence and our most valuable thing. Something we don't know how long we're going to be here. We all guess we'll be here tomorrow, but my mom had the challenge of finding out that her tomorrows were limited, and Brianna lived every day with a tomorrow that really wasn't, guaranteed. So that's where the time comes from. Now you put it on its side. It's actually made of two hearts. Those two hearts represent community. Can't do this alone, right? We're all involved in this together. The one on the left, the one on the left is your past, while the one on the right is your future, lifting up your past. And then we call it the butterfly effect. You are in control of your forward motion. And so that's a huge power. And one of the most recent things we kind of connected with it is a butterfly has to fly with both wings. And without both wings, you can't fly in the present, right? And so that's one of the big challenges, or the big things that we try to share, is that our past is a tool as much as our goals are for our future to help us in our present to get to that success. And so all that combined, here we are. Choose your attitude, create your life.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so thank you so much for that story, for for the way you, I don't know how to put it, the way you face those challenges, and not only decided to choose your own attitude and move on with your life, but you chose your attitude and decided to inspire others along the journey as well, right? Bring others, and recognizing that each one have different pains, different fears, and different stories, their own unique story, like you mentioned. But everybody could use that community, right? Everybody could use that helping hand. And I think the ability to choose your attitude, just like you said, is extremely powerful. I think I see it as a as a skill. I actually have a story around choose your attitude. And I always like it stayed in my mind, but I've never given it too much thought. But when I was in, I think it was in like fourth grade, something like that. I was back in school back in Venezuela, and I remember one of my best friends. He was going like a rough through a rough time with his family, and he's really close with his cousin, and his cousin told him like you can always choose your attitude. Happiness is it's a choice, right? He told him that, and I remember like we were very close, and he was just sharing with me that his experiences, and he shared that with me, and I just got it's one of those things that you never forget, right? It like hits you, you register it, and then you're like, wow, you just keep thinking. The thought comes through every once in a while when you most need it, right? When you're like, oh, why am I getting mad about this? And it's like you can choose your own happiness. It's like, oh, interested, right? Like,
Yep.
why am I seeing it this way? There's so many other points of views I can look at it from, and I have the power to decide it, right? So I love when you start sharing this message because it is needed. People need to understand that we are not at the mercy of our emotions, right? That we actually have the power to take a proactive choice, and that doesn't mean that you're like, you know, sweeping your emotions under the rug. It actually means that you have to recognize those emotions, deal with them in a healthy way, right? And then make the active choice of moving forward with your life, or, you know, take X, Y, and Z action to move forward. So thank you so much. I think it's a very inspiring message. And I mean, we're definitely we're gonna keep digging more into the mindset that comes to this, and obviously how can people apply it in their life, and maybe how can they start, you know, the practice of choosing their own attitude. But I want to let my brother talk a little bit too.
So good. Yeah, I mean, just this morning I was listening also to another podcast that we frequent, and they were talking about decisions, right? The decisions that we make every day, and they were talking about this area where life is a mix of lights and sounds and different things, right? And it's like it's really what is the meaning that we assign to those lights and sounds and things happening to us, right? And you know, I wrote that on the promotional post for the show today. It was like, we've been on this massive roller coaster since we started BIZBROS, right, 7 years ago, and nobody told us how massive this roller coaster was going to be, right? And it's like, from emotions to different things, like not counting what happened even before BIZBROS was a thing, right? With our private lives and personal lives, when we're trying even to come here to the United States. So a lot of things happen, right? And all these things, we choose the lens that we look those things through, right? And is our decision, nobody else's decision, nobody else's fault. We got to look inside and be like, what is the decision that I'm making to make the most out of this, right? And just recently there's something that we're about to announce, like in the next couple of weeks, you know, around some projects, right, that we're working on, that at first, you know, for us personally, it looked like, okay, what is the decision that we're making to make the most out of this situation, right? Whether it's good or bad, and we can assign those things. And it's incredible, man. I think it was perfect timing to have you on the show with everything that's happening around the show and the growth and the team and all that stuff. Good. So thank you. Now, part of your journey, I mean, wow, like just to share that story, like I can't imagine, right? Like, and we talked obviously about publishing and writing and all this stuff. Like, what motivated you to dive deep? Well, you explain at the end of that meaning with the past and your future, right? So a lot of people are very, very scared to dive into that past, including us. We're raising our hands, right? Because there's some stuff that we haven't shared, right? And to create that future, right? Those are lessons, those are things that, you know, with time we've learned to cope with them and use them and leverage it, if you mean. But what motivated you to start sharing that story? Those are very personal things, right? Those are very like meaningful, like maybe to you, and most people don't even dare to go there. So what was that fire that ignited you to share that story? And why? Was it the business that you had in mind? You're like, I'm gonna use this story to leverage it. Like, what was it?
So, you know, it's when you meet somebody with a life illness like this, that was one of the first questions I remember telling my mom after meeting her and knowing that this was going to be somebody that I was going to be with, and that, I could feel that connection. And one of her first things was this worry of like, okay, well, yeah, she sounds beautiful, but Nick, do you realize, that she is one day going to pass from this? And from that day on, it was like, well, right, our investment of somebody, of a friendship or a love or something, we look at the value of the person. And so that was one of the things that we put together, is at the very beginning of a relationship, we always had these talks. So this was something that for me was normal. We call them pillow talks, where we talked about death. We talked about these things. Now, mind you, obviously, date number one or first time we met, we're not, jumping into these conversations.
Yeah.
But through our 10-year relationship, this came up a lot as her lung function goes down, as those challenges happen, as, I lose my mom. So there's that, and the fact that in a sense I was primed unknowingly almost, just living a normal life, that I thought anyways, which it is a normal life. We're all going to die. But obviously everybody's got a different journey through that. And so I was comfortable in that. I guess unlike others that, maybe don't have those experiences that they've gone through. But then when I knew of Brianna and she passed, the story was something that, I knew it was something I needed to write about. Her journey was, with the quote and everything, I knew it was something powerful, where I actually had to fight through a little bit of myself, because I too was like, well, why is my story any, it's not, nobody's going to want to read about my story, like, or her story. But then as I talked to a book coach and understood the value of that, that moment was kind of one of those moments that I realized, oh no, people want to hear this. And what I found is, not relaying it or comparing it, in a sense it is, but if you're in an addiction or you go to AA, you've got that 12-step program. And part of that 12-step program is owning your story. And that's part of our present is, I've also related it to sports. When you're in sports and you're an athlete, you live every single day working on your failures, working on the things that maybe you're not good at. If you only worked on what you're good at, then what are you succeeding at, right? So, putting that all together, all of a sudden I realized the power that it was helping others, and how it was helping me. And so that's where I got comfortable to share the story, is as I learned, not only being comfortable in my own skin, being able to share the story with others, but then also myself, of part of, a whole nother lesson to add on top of that is, a teacher always told me that, you don't know something until you can teach it, right? Well, not directly to that, but at the same time, it was one of the same ideas that when you share your story with others, you keep unfolding, or you keep, digging at things, and you yourself are processing your own life, right? And so not only are you helping others, but you're also helping yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I have found in this as well is, just like right now, as I share these things, I'm not sharing these things on full autopilot. I'm also going through them, every single day. Oh, there's something I missed in the last, 3 years that I've been trying to figure. That is, and so that is something that has helped a lot. And that is where that all comes around is, it got to a point where I was comfortable with where I lived. Got to a point where I wanted to feel value in sharing my story, but then also realizing that my story was my story and how it would help others. But at the same time, understanding that my story is not over anybody else's story.
Yeah.
It's just a story to be shared to help others realize that their story is just as powerful and inspiring.
Absolutely.
So that's the full circle.
Yeah.
I love it. It reminds me of part of the conversation we had with Josh 40. He came, I think, episode 188, if I'm not mistaken. Just came out, but he was talking about when we start publishing, we don't do it for other people.
Yep.
We might think we're doing it, for other people, but once you start publishing, you realize you do it for yourself. Because like you said, like your story keeps unfolding. You start learning things as you start putting your thoughts into words. And honestly, it's a beautiful process. Like we've experienced it. The different from obviously episode 1 to episode now 191. We still make mistakes, of course, but it's not about how perfect you can tell your story, right? For us, it's about how well can we communicate these lessons, right? Or also, what are the things that we're learning when we're communicating these things? What are the commitments that we're putting out into the world? Because now that you're putting these thoughts out into reality, you have to stand by them, right? So sometimes you might say something and you're like, wow, do I really believe that? You start challenging your own beliefs, and it's amazing. After that, then it comes this segment where you're like, okay, I think I can help other people with this as well, and you start bringing them in. I think it's an amazing process. So I think you just put amazing. It's like a circle, and you just keep feeding at the end of the day. You just keep learning.
Yep,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I admire you, man, like big time. Because that's not easy, right? Like as you were sharing that story, I'm going in my head a lot of the conversations that we've had with people or in different masterminds, right? And obviously it took a lot for us to get our hair unpublished, right? And start having these conversations that mean a lot in so many levels, right? Like we haven't really seen a downside on publishing, right? And for you, you started with your book, and then we know also that you have a podcast. But at the end of the day, when we have these conversations, are you brave enough to actually go tackle these monsters, right? Because and like, do you actually believe in the things that you're doing? Do you actually believe in the service that you're providing? Do you actually believe in the product that you're putting out to people if you're selling something, right? And there's two faces, right, that we experience a lot in our industry. You see the creator side, which, let's say YouTube, for example, and there's creators that do it for the love of their thing, or like the love of their art, what they want to put out there, right, in whatever shape or form. And then we have on the other side the business that are trying to tackle this thing, but they struggle so much. And honestly, after all these conversations, that everything that we've seen, it comes down to really, can you really own your own story? Can you really own that? Can you really face it, right? Can you really face the truth and actually put it out there? And if you are, great, choose a channel and start executing relentlessly, right? But if you are not willing to do that, like, I don't think you really believe in what you've been doing. I don't really think that you believe in your business. I don't really think you believe in your team, because if you put it out there, it's real. Like it's not in your head anymore. It's out there for everybody. So I noticed that you want to like go tackle this conversation. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's but that's also part of being able to stand in the present. Just like the logo of the butterfly is, if you hide your past, no matter how difficult it is. I've talked to, I have a friend that I'm working with that works with a production company that is unincarcerated production, and she deals with people who are coming out of the state pen, and they've done some very extreme crimes. But does that really judge who they are? Because we've all made a mistake, and we all have a different challenge in our life that we've done.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, yes, there's always the 0.01, the 0.001% of the outlier that's like, okay, yes, you are that person. But for the most part, everybody's got a different challenge, and we're all just trying to survive and figure it out. And part of being able to do that productively is to be able to stand in that present and to keep building from where you are, just like in sports. For me, one of the questions you asked is this something that you did for a business, or you did? No, I actually love being able to help. But as you know, to be able to help, you also got to create, you have to have that income to kind of do that. And so that's what this is all about, is being able to share and to keep, you know, providing more content and more info to help people. Because when you see somebody else smile through one of their struggles, it's so empowering. When you hear somebody else's story, not saying that it's good to hear other people struggling, but it's good to hear that other people are just as normal as you are, right?
Mhm.
And so it's very beautiful to kind of go through that and to hear those things, and then at the same time to know that, when you're going through your struggle and you're confused, but then you see somebody else going, you're empowering me. Oh my gosh! All of a sudden, you're like, your fuel is reset. I will have to say too, like I've always been kind of a nurturer, or a person who, loves to see everybody. I'm in the music industry. I literally work every single day just for that 1 hour, and there's nothing more gratifying than challenging yourself all day to go through that hustle to get that show on. And when
Yeah.
those lights go off and 10,000 people are screaming at the top of their lungs, they've paid money to be able to take themselves and remove themselves from reality for an hour. And it's just that feeling of gratitude of, okay, these people are loving this and enjoying this. And my worth is something greater. And if I could just help others realize the worth that they have, that's where it's all about. Because at the end of the day, that's where I was struggling is, okay, well, I lost what I thought all I had. But then to come to find out that the story I had was my worth. And as soon as I started building off of that, I realized how empowering I was for myself, let alone others. And so,
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
No, no, absolutely. I love the analogy with the concert, and how making feel people that way. And I love how passionate obviously you are to what you're building. Something that you mentioned at the very beginning was that we don't have control on things that we wish we would have control, right?
Yeah.
And most of the times I feel like stress and all these emotions come from trying to control those things that we cannot control, right? Instead of going by the path of choosing your attitude and asking yourself, what is it that I can control, right? That will make me happy, and do that. So how do you, right? I'm curious now, transitioning here a little bit more practical for people to maybe start reflecting, right? And asking themselves the questions that might help them move forward. How can people get into that state of recognizing that they don't have the power always, over certain things, and how can they start pretty much choosing their own attitude when they come to these moments, right? Don't get overwhelmed by the emotions. Sounds easier than done, obviously.
It,
I sorry, go ahead.
no, for sure. You're right. But it's a relationship with yourself. It's just like a relationship with a teammate or somebody else. If you're hiding a part of you, you don't even know yourself. And if you don't have that, that drive to be intrigued to know yourself, how are you going to present that to other people? Or how are you going to even be able to control your own self? Or how are you going to be able to know what to choose in your own journey? And so, like, one thing that I always look at is I'm still learning, and I will be learning until the day I die. But the challenge that I like is I'm continually putting myself in the uncomfortable. So you ask, how do I do it? And it's funny when you ask, because it's like in my head, I hear you asking almost like, okay, how do I build this? And, when you build a shed, it's okay, step 1, step 2, step 3. This is how you do it. Well, there's no perfect step. At the same time too, it's like, all these people wanting to, go to the gym and work out. But they miss the inner part of the doing or the acknowledging. It's a process. You're not going to get to the finish line right away. You have to get through the consistency. You have to get through the difficult part. And so that's where it becomes the empowering, is to be able to stand inside the uncomfortable. And the more you stand inside the uncomfortable, you learn what your triggers are. You learn who you are when you're in those moments. I still to this day am not the best at it, but I do understand my emotions. I do understand when I'm sad. I do understand what's causing me to be sad. And at the same time, the more and more I challenge myself, I'm able to learn sooner in the development of those feelings. And I'm also learning how to then share that with others. Hey, right now I just need my time, or hey, I'm having a crappy day. Can you help me? Let's go out and do something. Or, whatever it may be. But without knowing or stepping within and challenging yourself, you're never going to learn. And so again, going back to sports or even, fitness, every single day, they spend more time practicing, putting themselves in those challenges to make them better, to win that Super Bowl, to get that medal for that. So that if you take that and apply that to life, it's the same thing. You practice, you got to put yourself there. Is it going to be easy? Is it going to be a smile every time? No, that's not the goal. The goal is to be comfortable in those situations. And what's even more empowering is somebody like Brianna or somebody who's going through an extreme challenge. We see them as a hero. Why do we see them as a hero? Because they're doing something that we feel is difficult to do, when really to them, they feel it's easy to do because they've lived that way the whole entire time.
Yeah. I think that's important. Kind of like how we perceive heroes, right? Is usually, I feel it, because they have something we want, right? They have that relentlessness or some trait that they have that they cultivated that we want. But maybe the question is, we got to ask ourselves, am I willing to go, put in the work to get that trait as well, right? And I mean, something that I've noticed is most people don't take the time to think and reflect and, ask themselves those questions. They just go through life pretty much. And I love the fact that you mentioned that you yourself sometimes get in that mood as well, right? The other day I saw somebody post on Instagram. It was like, this is a reminder that even the most enlightened people in the world get grumpy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I love it. Like, this is amazing, because there's a lot out there that just makes people perceive that the heroes are always perfect, right? And then that creates false expectations. And when you make a mistake now, you're like, oh no, I cannot be like that person. It's about just being raw and real and understanding that everybody goes through their own personal hard times and they get grumpy and sometimes, but the difference is they're taking certain actions that maybe you are not taking yet. I don't remember who shared this with us. It was somebody that came here on the podcast, but he was talking about when he feels down, where he feels that he's very stressed or sad, like these negative emotions, he grabs pen and paper and he starts asking himself, why am I feeling like this, right? And then he just goes deep, like, why am I feeling stressed? Well, because I have a lot of work to do. How do I have a lot of work to do? Well, because I procrastinate a little bit, right? Why have I procrastinated? And then he said he just gets to the root of the problem, and then all is left is for him to make a choice on how to solve that problem, right?
I call it the voices in my head. I have my adult brain. My adult brain is usually the brain that kind of stands above and understands the situation. I've got the child brain that's within my emotions, the one that's, crying and all about me. Yeah. And then there's the mediator brain, the mediator brain, which is the one that usually gets the final call. But he's the one who says, okay, well, the adult says this, the child wants this, but where are we going to meet in the middle? And that's huge. And I think one more thing I want to kind of mention, I have two different things to talk about it. you had mentioned kind of this pressure, especially with social media and all these different things that we have. You have all these celebrities, and as soon as one of them lives in front and actually does something normal, but something that is, what we would call not celebrity status or whatever, the world freaks out. Well, we've got social media where all these people don't even live the life they're sharing pictures of. They see a Ferrari and they don't even have a car to themselves, but they'll go lean up against it and take a picture and then go, be on the street asking for food because, they want to look like this glamour, but at the same time, they don't even have that. Well, if we live in a world like that, it's obviously it's a fake world, and we're not able to actually, you're not getting anywhere. You're hiding that.
Yeah.
And I think it's unfair because we've created this idea that if we just always have smiles and happiness, then life is great. It's like the question that drives me nuts. How many times when you see somebody, they go, "Hey, how are you?" 95% of the time, there's nobody who's going to actually answer that question honestly. I myself sometimes have a hard time doing that because I don't know if you can actually, take the real answer at times.
Yeah.
So, it's in that question. Now, moving forward, I want to go to the movie Shrek. So I love Shrek. Why? Because Disney and Pixar and they always have amazing job in kind of having these like hidden, backstories. And one thing I love about Shrek that I don't think a lot of people realized is the power within Princess Fiona, right? During the day, Princess Fiona is what the world sees as that Instagram hero, right? And everybody idolizes her. But the true beauty is at night, who she really is, who Shrek falls in love with.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that I've been learning with myself is that you at night, or that person with the makeup off, the person that's not leaning against a Ferrari, but is truly standing in their present with that past and that future.
Yeah.
That's the true beauty. And just like Shrek, they did that with Princess Fiona. At the end, you go, oh, the ogre is actually the beauty, and Princess Fiona was this fake facade.
Yeah.
And so if you take that and do the same thing with our life, it's the same idea that, okay, dress up, put your makeup on, but that's not you. When you're in your real self, that's when you can be the beauty with the scars, with the blood, with the reality of where you stand. It's not going to be pretty. So now I want to kind of take this to a real, scenario. You've got Shrek to, this kind of fairy tale. And I want to take you to one of my first interviews that I did on my podcast, Choose Your Attitude podcast. And it was with a friend of mine from high school. She was in a rock climbing accident where she lost her leg. A big old boulder about the size of a mini car. I forget what, like a Volkswagen Bug, landed on it. And so they had to amputate her leg. So in the interview, I asked her, I said, what does it feel to be held up as a hero to so many just because you're trying to walk? To her, she's like, she has no other choice. She's just living, right? But to everybody else, oh my God, you're a hero because look at this is such a, huge challenge.
Yeah.
And she said, well, people just feel that way because they can see my challenge. But the other thing is my challenge is parallel with everybody else's challenge. We're all going through something. Hers right now is trying to walk. Somebody else's is financial stress. They can't pay the bills. Somebody else got in a divorce. Somebody else lost their job. That is what they're focused on. That is the challenge they're going through. And it's the perspective of that and the power of realizing, oh, everybody's got their challenge. And in that challenge has that unique past. Because, if you want to make this even deeper, now all of a sudden we can all three of us stand here. we could all at this moment go through the same challenge, but we're all going to react differently because you two have a different life. I've lived a different life. And so the information I have from my past is going to give me a different calculation than you guys. And so that's a whole, like, but that is part of standing within and learning who you are, because you are your own self, and that learning that, like, we are our unique selves. And so that's
Dude, Nick, thank you. Again, as you share these stories in my head, where I'm always going back to the journey, right? And how we at a certain point trying to find the answers in external things or external hacks and tactics or strategies or whatever. If you talk business, right, or in life, it's like that person might have figured out, let's go and do it. And after all these conversations, we always go back to inner work, right? Like, it's us. We gotta stand still. We gotta learn ourselves, and then we gotta act regardless of what's happening around us, right? With our goal in mind, right? With that challenge that you mentioned, right? We gotta keep an eye. Okay, how are we actually gonna solve that, right?
Yes.
There's so much noise. So how do you actually control it? Like, tune it out. Like, what is your one focus? How to stay centered, right? And in the past, like, 3 months, we both have been working very, very hard to bring that focus back into us. Like, just focus on what BIZBROS is doing, just focus on what we're producing, what we're doing, forget everything else, right? And we're constantly reminded of all this stuff because we talk to people because of the nature of our business and the service that we offer. The people that are coming through, that what is my external solution to my problem? What is this? And a lot of the things that we talked through the 45 Live Challenge or the workshop has been, what is your solution to your challenge? Like, how do you come up with your own framework of operations so you can actually solve it? Because your resources, your mindset, your moment in life is very different than somebody else. And it took us years to get to that point, to be at peace with that too. And we're like yourself, we continue to grow, we continue to learn, we continue to try to improve. And we have those bumps. Like, just last night, I was talking to my wife, right? And she goes, "Hey, babe, like, are you okay?" Right? That question that you just asked, right? Are you okay? And I'm like, "Yeah, babe, I'm okay." Right? And that's normally the lie that we tell everybody, "Yeah, I'm okay." And she goes like, I can tell that you're not okay. Like, I can see it physically that you're not okay. What's going on? And then I slowed down and I was like, this is actually what's happening. In the next couple of weeks, we have this new project coming on. A schedule is all messed up. We have no idea what the next 3 weeks are gonna look like. We are been trying to build a routine. We've been trying to build a flow in our week of the production, with the show, with all the things that we do. And for the next month or so, I don't know how that's gonna look like, and that is driving me insane, right? So it was that moment where we're like, okay, how do we slow down? And the second I said it, it was like this massive boulder just like out of my back. And I'm like, oh, that is the problem. That is the challenge. So now let's work backwards to what FONZI was saying earlier, right? Let's work backwards and see, okay, that is one of the reasons. Like, let's deep dive a little bit more. And what's the solution? We need to take action on certain things. And that's what I'll be focusing for the rest of the week, to make sure I don't feel that way. So I encourage everybody, thank you for bringing that up, because I encourage everybody, if you feel that way, start asking those questions, right? Why am I feeling this way? Like, what's causing this? And explore that, because the answer is there. It's not in an external thing. And that's why you sometimes we default to procrastination, we default to these things, and then it's completely worst because then we don't do anything. So, man, it's been so fun. I really want to tackle the publishing. I know we have a couple of questions left for you. As we wrap up the show, we might have to do a part 2 at some point. So #juicy. But there's the second to last question is like, what would you recommend somebody? What is like a very sweet, awesome action point that we can do today to become more aware, right? And get that momentum. What is something that we can do, maybe on a morning routine or a nighttime routine? What is something that we can do?
Ooh, good question. I think one of the most important things to do is, when you wake up, obviously, you always got your list of things to address and to champion. But I think the biggest thing to do, and that kind of a broad question, But if I was to direct it towards, trying to learn oneself more or trying to understand oneself, I would say, you take the biggest things that you're scared to communicate with people and try and write about it. Try and acknowledge about it. Try to talk to somebody about it. And the more and more you bring that up, or the more and more you can surface it, you can get closer with it. And what you'll realize, and this is something I've realized, is you get to a point where all of a sudden it empowers you. It becomes a tool of success. And, for example, with my mom and Brianna passing, at first it was a weight. It was something difficult. I had to hide it because I was scared, because it created resistance. It was like an anchor. But then all of a sudden, the more and more I got comfortable with it, and the more and more I brought it up, all of a sudden it became an empowerment. It made me happy. It was one of those things. I have tattoos on both forearms, of one for my mom and one for Brianna. And I can happily say with a smile who these people are and share that they've passed. It's not that I'm happy that they're gone. It's just because I've figured out what I'm truly thankful for and grateful for, and how empowering they were. So, it's kind of the same thing of is the glass half full or half empty? Well, yes, it is half full. Yes, it is half empty. But at the same time, if it's just like in our successes, or like you said, the challenges you're facing, sometimes people get mad when you only focus on that one thing. Well, if you only focus on not being able to get there, or the success of, oh, well, I want to get from point A to point B, but you never focus on working on what that most, the big point thing is, then you're never going to get there. So it's literally writing those things down and acknowledging them. And the more and more you go through things in life, as you acknowledge these different things, or you have these different moments, and you reflect on them, you start to. It's kind of like if you have a kid, and or a dog or something, as in that parent instinct, when things happen because they can't communicate, you learn different ways of understanding them. Well, it's the same way with ourselves. And so by writing those things down, creating quotes, figuring out what makes you happy. For example, something makes me happy, I can, by listening to different types of music, helps me get into different types of moods, or pull out of being sad, or put myself into a comfortable position. And as you do these different things, you write them down. And as you do that, you'll find all of a sudden that control that you felt like you never had, all of a sudden you have more ability to control what you can control, allowing you not to focus on what you can't control.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can empower that. So just like the glass is half full or half empty. Well, if it's half empty, you can't control what's half empty. But what's half full, you can definitely control that.
Yeah.
So,
Love it.
This is amazing. I mean, we're gonna
we gotta distill this thing
for the listeners. Go back and re-listen to the actual. That is 100%
minute
sure.
51, by the way. So good. I always love these questions, because it's like, it makes you think, right? Like, it's like, okay, you have been in these incredible situations, right, that you've taken, and you own them, and then you've been able to inspire so many, right? So I encourage everybody listening right now, go and do that. Like I wrote here, big things that you're scared to communicate with people, write about it, right? Like, to me, that was the golden boulder there, and there's a little bit more to that, but it's like, what is that one thing that you're actually gonna do, right? And I've never kept a diary, never wrote things down. To me, publishing has been more on the live aspect when we started doing these things. But I think it's something that is going to do. And I go to a very specific moment in my life where my first dog died, like a few months ago, right? And it was unexpected. He meant a lot to us. And I remember feeling this whole weight, and I sat down and I wrote something that I never published. I never put it out there. I wrote it with the idea of putting it out there, but I never did. And the second I finished that 2-pager, I was released. I was like, this is it. It was this incredible moment, right? And I brought some lessons from it, and then we reflected, Fonzie and I, in a different conversation, and that's it. And it was incredible. So I encourage everybody to go do this.
Yeah, you'll find one thing I found too is the more you figure this out and the more you find those things out, you're angry less, you're sad less. Why? Because all of a sudden, you're able to communicate, you're able to share, and a lot of the times, most of the time, anger, hatred, all those things are because we don't understand and we don't know how to communicate, and so that's our kind of that fight or flight, and so it
Yeah.
the more you know yourself, the more you're able to communicate with yourself, and then you can control your situations. So,
yeah,
Love
I love
it.
it. I love the communication with yourself aspect of it. So important. For me, yes, always what my brother said is the golden boulder that I took out too, but also the fact that by doing that, you're empowering yourself. So I want to encourage the listener right now to make the time, right? I mean, we have plenty of time, so make the time to do this, sit down, write these things that maybe are bothering you, that have a weight on you, you might not be willing to share with others, but communicate them to yourself, right? And start reflecting and see how you feel. And then I'm sure you will start doing it more often because you're going to feel great. And all of a sudden, you're going to be choosing your attitude.
Yeah.
exactly.
All right, Nick, last question of the show. We know you had have an incredible podcast. We're going to leave all the links right below, but relating to publishing, like, where will you be if you did not publish?
Where would I be if I did not publish?
Yep.
I would definitely still be doing my thing with the road. You know, I if it wasn't for, you know, that moment of writing and figuring out the true worth of those things, you know, I still would have been stuck on the road. When everything crumbled, the only thing I felt I had was my road family and touring, and you know, yes, I did create that dream, and yes, it was something that I created, but it's not my full identity. And so it, you know, that's where I would have been and where I still am. Matter of fact, here in a couple days, I'm going back out with Dave Matthews Band, so I'll be out there till.
Awesome.
Yep. But still,
say hi to them from us.
Yes, I will for sure. But yeah, that's where I would have been. But at the same time, I'm thankful to have this journey and to realize the true worth in myself as well. So
yeah, the importance of community. I'm getting here too, right? Surround yourself with loving people that are gonna be there for you, and you can be there for them as well. So important, and is one of the Choose Your Attitude logo modes. I don't know how are you gonna call those, but I want to encourage people to go to your website, because I saw you have them in there explained. Is it chooseyouratitude.com?
Sure is. Yep. ChooseYourAttitude.com. And then our social links are Choose Attitude, Create Life, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube channel, youtube.chooseyouratitude.com. And yeah, everything's there. And would love to have your guys' support. And we've got all apparel, you know, men's, women's apparel and accessories. Always sharing that premium encouragement. And definitely working on releasing more items for everybody. So
love it.
That's gonna be fun, guys. We're gonna leave all the links right below. All you gotta do is scroll down and click in there. Go support, go follow, go buy some merch.
Yeah, go awesome. Listen to the Choose Your Attitude podcast too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, make Choose Your Attitude your whole week, and then
your whole life.
And then your whole life.
Yeah, you get your attitude for life. That's right.
Nick, everything else you want to add before we head out?
No, just thank you for having me on. It's been a journey, and I appreciate it. And as always, it's good to be able to talk about it and share with others. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you so much, man. It was amazing.
Fonzie, anything else you want to add?
No, I just said it. I just wanted to thank him for coming here and sharing his vulnerability and his truth, and you know what he's trying to, the movement, man, you're trying to create, which I have no doubt is going to be a massive movement here in a little bit. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you involving us in it.
Thank you.
All right, guys. With that said, thank you so much for tuning into the Content Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show on your favorite platform and on social media at BIZBROS Co.
That is right. And if Nick here today helped you move one step closer to your goal, please don't forget to share this episode and don't forget to leave a 5-star review. Thank you.
Bye, guys.